Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hockey Writers Ice Time, where we dive into some of the big ideas around the NHL. I'm Mike Fink, and we've got a very special episode because we're on video on YouTube for the first time on Ice Time, and I've got three guests this week. Usually it's just one or two, but we've got three, and for a special reason, I'm joined by Mark Scheig, who covers the Columbus Blue Jackets here at the Hockey Writers. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. And I'm joined by Stefano Rubino, who covers the Colorado Avalanche here at the Hockey Writers. Stefano, how you doing?
I'm going to follow up on Mark's answer. I'm doing pretty well.
All right. And lastly, in case that's not a clue of what we're going to talk about, this should be the hint of what we're about to talk about. I got Matthew Zator, who covers the Vancouver Canucks here at the Hockey Writers. Matthew, how are you doing?
Doing good. Excited to be on here. It's gonna be fun.
All right. In case the three teams wasn't a clue, let's just reveal what we're talking about. We are going to debate who wins the Norris Trophy this season. It's a three-person race. We've got the three writers of the three of the players on their teams: Cale Makar for the Colorado Avalanche, Zach Werenski for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and Matthew Zator here representing Quinn Hughes. Each of them are going to make their case. I'll try my best Judge impersonation or my best Tony Reale impersonation in honor of Around the Horn, which is in its last season. But regardless, we are going. Each of you are going to make your case, and I guess we'll decide at the end who should win the Norris Trophy. I'll start with you, Mark, the newcomer on the block, Zach Werenski, because the other two have been around for a while. They've been finalists. Both of them have won, actually. Cale Makar in 2022, and Quinn Hughes, the reigning trophy winner. So Werenski's the new kid on the block. What is the case for him to win the award this year?
He's got a very compelling case, and any discussion he has to be a part of. So there's a few things that are going in his favor. So even despite his team hasn't been doing so well of late, been a little bit of a struggle, 0-5-1 in their last six going into Monday's game against the Islanders. It's fallen off a little bit, but it takes nothing away from everything that he's done. So you've got nobody skated more than him. He's got the most time on ice average in the National Hockey League. He's fifth in shots on goal of everybody and leads all defensemen by a mile. So just his ability to be able to generate offense. And then that translates into what he's able to do for his teammates as well. I actually think that he has just as compelling of a case for the Hart Trophy as much as he does the Norris, just because of everything that he's able to do. You take him off of the Blue Jackets, you're talking about having a top 5 to 10 easily NHL draft pick coming up in 2025. But what he's able to do to get the puck up to the forwards, he's able to jump into the play. And then on top of all that, for most of the season, he's actually led all defensemen, including Makar and Hughes, in 5-on-5 points, which I think a lot of voters really look at as a huge indicator of, the offensive portion of the Norris Trophy. But what doesn't get enough attention with Werenski is his defensive play. That's the part that he's really stepped up, where he's outplaying against a lot of the top competition. He's outscoring the opposition when he's on the ice. And then when they got Dante Fabro, when they claimed him off waivers from the Nashville Predators, they got a partner for him that's been really able to open his game up. Then he's been able to stay healthy all season, and there you have it. You have somebody that has propelled the Blue Jackets to the playoff race, and that's the stuff of a Norris Trophy candidate for you right there.
It's so interesting. The fact that he's come onto the scene. He's rounded out his game this season. And you mentioned the Hart Trophy. I think what's interesting is that all three people here can make the case that their player could also be in the Hart Trophy conversation. And they might if they have the time to. But it's interesting. He's rounded out his game, and the value he brings to his team, which is what you're mentioning, is without him, where would they be? I think it's interesting you could mention that about the other teams. And I guess, Matthew, that's a good place to start, is where would the Canucks be without Quinn Hughes, who pretty much it's like they're on the borderline playoff team, just like the Blue Jackets. They're in that mix. They're not in the playoffs now, but if they get on a run, they will be. And same with the Blue Jackets. But the case is similar, where it's the value he brings to the team. Where would they be without him? And And I have to wonder what, because last season was the career year where it was just everything went right for the Canucks, and Quinn Hughes was the centerpiece of that. This season, it's more of not everything's going right. Everything, on the contrary, everything's pretty much going about as bad as you could ask for in Vancouver, except for Quinn Hughes. So what is that the case for him, or what else should we add to say this is why he should win it again? He won it last season. Can he go back to back winning the award?
With Quinn Hughes, it's going to be tough this season because of his injury. He's missed 16 games this season, but on the same note, he's got 67 points, and he's still third in points amongst defensemen missing those games. So it's still really pretty ridiculous of what he's still been doing, even though he's been hurt, not at 100%. And the last couple games, the Rangers game, he was a beast. He was just all over the ice, breaking ankles. Like he broke Matt Rempe at the blue line, made him fall down. And just like his edge work is just insane. As everyone knows, his skating is probably one of the best in the league. And he just controls the play whenever he's on the ice. And a lot of what Mark said can be described with what Quinn Hughes does too. He just controls play whenever he's on. And whenever you're on the ice with them, you have to be ready for what he's going to do. And one thing that's really changed in this game, probably since I'd say maybe a couple of years, is that he's not hesitating to shoot the puck. And before, in his draft year, one of his weaknesses was his shot, that he's not dangerous. Now, I mean, it's not a not a Shea Weber or anything like that, but he just knows how to get it on net and create chances. He had 9 shots on goal against the Rangers, and he just plays so much. He played 28 minutes in that game. He averages about 25, and he creates so much with his puck possession. I think he's up there this season again with possession, and the advanced stats are just insane. But with him on the ice and with him not on the ice, of how much goals for per 60, chances for Corsi, all those numbers are just so much in the positive when he's on the ice, apart when he's not. And that's just a big thing for me. I mean, he's going to have a hard time, I think, for getting the votes this season. He's going to get them, but just because of the fact that he's been hurt, and Werenski and Makar haven't, they've played most of the year, I think is a big thing. But I still think Hughes has a big chance of making it, just because of how much he's still a dominant defenseman, even though he's not at 100% health.
It's really the bang for your buck case with Quinn Hughes, where when he's on the ice, the impact he's made in those games, where it's the team pretty much goes with him, where it's if he's on the ice and he's playing at a high level, they're winning games and they're piling up the wins. And when he's not on the ice, it's like, yeah, they're falling apart. And you saw that at some points in the season. And if the Canucks get in, and it's similar with the Blue Jackets, where if they both get in, you can easily make the case, and it's going to be for both of them, where if they get into the playoffs, you can make the case they carried their team into the playoffs. There's not a lot going right. I mean, there are things going right with both those teams, but it's pretty much they are the star players willing their teams into the playoffs. And they're in a similar boat also in the same thing, where Zach Werenski is rounding out his game this season. Quinn Hughes did it last season to just become truly one of the elite defensemen. And that just leaves us with Cale Makar, who's just been, I think what's interesting is he's been in the picture. He's been front and center for such a long time. We kind of overlook his greatness a bit, where we take it for granted. And what is surprising is everyone knows he's, if not the best defenseman in the NHL, always top 3, maybe even top 2. There's debate between Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar, but he's only won 1 Norris Trophy, which is a little surprising for me, seeing like he's this good. He should win it all the time. And historically, the Norris Trophy was awarded to the best defenseman of that era, not just of that year, but Ray Bourque won it a few times, Paul Coffey, Bobby Orr won it a few times. These defensemen, and he's only won it once. And I feel like we overlook him a bit, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like there's that compelling case every season. But this season, he's leading defenseman in points, and I think he's on pace for 100, if I'm not mistaken. He's close to it. So Stefano, we overlook him. We seem to just always take him for granted. What is the argument? He's on a good team. We know the Avalanche are pretty much going to be the 3rd seed in the Central Division. So there's not like an intrigue of, can he will them to the best record? Can he will them pass the Stars? Maybe there isn't really that argument there, or in terms of how he could carry the team, even though he has carried the team, that's probably a good case for him. But what is it this season? What can we say that is the best argument for Cale Makar?
When we talk about looking at him through a different lens and how he's overshadowed, when you look at the other comparisons we're making with Werenski and Quinn Hughes, is you look at the Vancouver situation of, the Miller-Pettersson situation, and how when they were always slouching and there was always that drama, Quinn Hughes was reportedly like playing hurt, still putting up a point per game, and he was like that backbone of the team. You look at Zach Werenski, and there is you can make an argument, no bona fide one, but there's a group of guys that are hungry to make the playoffs. And with Sean Manahan, Boone Jenner, Werenski's getting to that veteran age where he's been there a long time. And where you look at Makar, you don't think of Makar first with Colorado. You look at Nathan MacKinnon, and you look at the production that he's making and how he's got to technically make a step back when it comes to who's leading this team up front. And so you look at Cale Makar's case, first in goals, assists, points, power play goals, shorthanded goals, all while being second on time on ice at 25-39. And so offensively, you look at the metrics, it's been really close. Werenski is a bit on a slump, 6 games, no points, when he was just on that historic 19 game, I believe it was rather home or point streak in general. Hughes is now coming back from injury. He's got 6 points in his last 5. He's heating up. Vancouver's still struggling, but again, he's doing everything he can. And Colorado's heating up right now as well after making all those trades in the deadline. And it's not just Makar. It's Nelson's now got points in his last 3. McKinnon's still heating up. Necas has been a topic of discussion. Goaltending is great. And so when you look at the case of, yes, he's scoring at potentially a historic level. He's trying to get past 30 goals, which hasn't been done since Ovechkin's defenseman partner in Mike Green. It's going to be something that you overlook when it comes to the other cases of how it's going to look in their eyes, in certain voters of, hey, they're sitting comfortably in 3rd right now. They're only 3 points behind Dallas, where Werenski is trying to help Columbus get into the playoffs. Vancouver has been just a mess with injuries and all these stipulations. He's trying to will them into the lead. So it's not just that its production is being overlooked. It's the stories around these different teams of how their defenseman is pushing through. And it's not, in a sense, hurting Makar because he's still playing great. We're recognizing that. But when it comes to what is a Norris Trophy, is a defenseman that just gets the most points, then it's going to go to Makar probably. But defensemen do more than just put up points. It's defensive metrics. Makar's second in takeaways behind Jacob Slavin. He's got 71 to 55. That's a plus 18 metric difference. Obviously, I don't know the Corsi when it's on ice and everything, but you can make an argument for all 3 that they just said of when he's not on the ice versus when he's on the ice. And so it's just going to be I believe as well, come to them, is how can these Colorado Avalanche and Makar finish the season? Can he hit 30 goals and 100 points? And I think if he can, I think voters are going to look at recency bias with how they finish the season. If he did get 30, they're going to go, hey, if they finish second, maybe threaten the Jets for first, then they get my vote.
I think it's interesting. You mentioned the 30 goals and you mentioned the 100 points. I find it interesting. The case against him usually is that McKinnon is there, and if you're the second best player on your own team, can you really win the Norris Trophy? I'll actually ask you this case, which is the roster. We talk about everything the Blue Jackets have been through, everything the Canucks have been through. I think what's interesting, a good case for Cale Makar, is that the Avalanche overhauled their roster outside of McKinnon and Makar and Devon Taves and a few depth skaters here or there. They overhauled the roster. It almost seems to make a better argument for him where he is one of the players that's carrying them. And the fact that the Avalanche have stayed steady, they really haven't had those peaks and valleys in this season. I wonder what we make of these obstacles. How does Makar stand out twofold? One, on a roster that is talented. Now it's even more talented, where the trade deadline, you could make the argument it hurts his case, because the Mikko Rantanen trade, you look back and it seems to have helped the Avalanche a lot, where Martin Necas is playing very well in that forward unit, and they got Brock Nelson, and they added Charlie Coyle, so they fixed their roster, and the goaltending, overhauled the goaltending. So they really made a lot of upgrades. That almost seems to hurt his case. But what's the argument that this is actually better for his case to win the award?
I think this is more of a case for Nathan MacKinnon when it comes to a Hart Trophy. And I know that's a different topic of discussion. I won't go into his case. But when you look at the defense, that's been one of the, I guess you can say, quote unquote, more luckier positions that hasn't been dealt with either injuries or players. If I do believe now with the additions of Brock Nelson, Charlie Coyle, and Ryan Lindgren with Eric Johnson, the Colorado Avalanche have dressed 49 or 50 different skaters from forwards, defensemen, and goalies. They're on their 6th goalie this season already. And so you can make an argument it's more for Nathan MacKinnon and how he's on pace to finish it. Last time I checked, around 130 points. And for Makar, he's been lucky enough that Devon Toews hasn't been injured. He hasn't been needed to shuffle down with his player, Devon Toews, to play with either Sam Walensky or Ryan Lindgren, because Bednar knows that if there's a slump or if there's some issues that they know Devon Toews and Cale Makar can get through. I don't know if Zach Werenski or Quinn Hughes have had different multiple line mates or injuries. I know they both dealt with defensive injuries, but I don't know how many times they're being switched off different pairings mid-game, trying something new if they're down or ahead. But for Makar, he's been really lucky that not only health-wise that his main all-star partner has been safe, but he's able to contribute, like you said, with all these different skaters, thanks to Nathan MacKinnon and this power play system in their offensive structure.
It seems like he's the opposite of the storyline player, which is a lot of times people want to vote for a Norris Trophy winner. They want to vote for a storyline. One of the things that I like to look at, I don't have a vote, but one of the things I like to say is, how will you remember this season? What will you take away? Mark mentioned with Zach Werenski, the winning the Hart Trophy, which is a good case if they make the playoffs. What will you remember from the season? You'll remember the Blue Jackets, a team that was supposed to be a top 5 pick team, end up making the playoffs. And why did they make the playoffs? Is because of Werenski. Makar doesn't have that story where it's what will you remember from the season, unless it's he gets 100 points, he gets 30 goals. Maybe it's just a stat-based thing, but it seems like it's hard to say, okay, this season, what stands out from it? Last season it was Quinn Hughes on a team that was dominant, because the Canucks were dominant during the regular season. Quinn Hughes was their best player and rounded out his game. So I'll actually ask you, Mark, I'll ask you this, because if it is a narrative-based award, Werenski has the best case. If they make the playoffs, they're on the outside looking in. So, but the question is, outside of narrative, outside of that storyline, what is his best case? We talk about his workload. We talk about all the stuff he does, but what is the thing that will stand out for him outside of, he's the guy that carries his team to the playoffs, because he's having an excellent season. His stats aren't as good as Makar's, but what stands out outside of what will you remember from the season, I think?
Well, just everything that he's had to overcome. And we know that the Blue Jackets had one of the most tragic starts to a season that anybody could ever endure in the Johnny Gaudreau situation. So I think on a national level, there's a lot of fans out there that are hoping that the Blue Jackets get in because of the fact that it would make for one heck of a story. It's already one of the best stories in sports that they're even fighting for a playoff spot. If they happen to make it, it just takes on a whole new life of its own. But I want to present to you guys, I don't think the playoffs should matter as much. I mean, Erik Karlsson won it just a couple years ago, and he didn't make the playoffs, but he had over 100 points. And anybody that's watched the Blue Jackets, I mean, the game that sticks out for me this year was the game against Tampa Bay. It was like a 7-6 overtime final where he ended up scoring 2 goals and 3 assists. That's the kind of game that would stick out for him, where he just took over. He has the ability, like Makar, like Hughes, just to be able to take over any game at will when he's going right. And, Stefano mentioned, has he played with some other guys before? Game situationally, yes, he's played with Damon Severson at times. Later in games, he'll play with Ivan Provorov, but it's been mostly with Dante Fabro. And yet, no matter who he's with, he elevates everybody in the lineup. Sean Monahan, Kirill Marchenko, Dmitry Voronkov, Kent Johnson, Adam Fantilli, you name it, they are all better because Zach Werenski's on the ice with them compared, when he's on the ice, when he's not on the ice. So you have to look at it from an overall standpoint with this. It's not about the most points. It's whoever the most outstanding defenseman is where they have a good combination of both being really good offensively, but then also being able to shut down the opposition just as well. And in Werenski's case, he has both going for him, where that on top of everything that they've had to play through, because nobody knew what the Blue Jackets were going to come out like. And he's been able to do this season to honor his fallen teammates. I think that's what most will remember Werenski for. At least that's what will stand out.
I do wonder if they fall apart, let's say, or if they finish, because when you talk about the way the Eastern Conference is, if a cold finish to the season or really just having a bad finish to the season can have you 11th or 12th in Eastern Conference. Does that hurt his case? Does that hurt his case, or does that really put him behind the 8 ball? Would you say that it doesn't really matter to the point, just like Erik Karlsson, where his value to his team is so much better that even if they are near the bottom of the Eastern Conference, they could still get into the playoffs. But just conversely, everything goes wrong at the end of the season. Is there still that case for him?
There still is that case for him, but you do make an interesting point because, the voters do vary year to year. So just because someone votes one year, some do vote the next year, but then some don't. Sometimes it changes up a little bit, and it's always subjective. So you get a variety of opinions, especially those that are covering other teams and might not see the Blue Jackets as much. So they might just take a quick glance at the standings and say, oh, they really finished poorly at the end of the year. That might look bad on Werenski. But anybody that's watched him all year sees what he's been able to do every day. So that's what's going to really come down to. It's going to come down to who ultimately gets a vote, how much they've watched the other players involved, and then kind of see the overarching theme of what the Blue Jackets have been able to overcome. I mean, there's some crazy numbers when it comes to just the way that Werenski's performed. The 5-on-5 numbers this year, the Blue Jackets power play hasn't been that great. I think that's the one thing that Makar and Hughes do get a lot of credit for, and deservedly so, is their power play production. And I believe Makar now has taken over the lead on 5-on-5 points as of late. I'd have to check, but most of the season it was Werenski. And I think that's what a lot of voters are not going to recognize right off the bat without properly researching, was just how good offensively he was. There's times that he was even ahead of Makar in the scoring race here until this recent slump. So that's a lot to consider there.
I think you mentioned a lot of good things there, which is one, there depends on what the voting contingency is. And you've got a lot of analytical voters are like ones who look at the advanced stats. You guys mentioned a bunch of stats that frankly don't really pay attention to / don't really know much about. I'll know the basic hockey reference stats like defensive point shares, which I think Makar is actually leading the league in defensive point shares, but that's neither here nor there. You have some people who they watch their teams or they watch locally, but they don't know that there's only that much you can watch. The reality is we all cover teams here. There's only that much we can watch in the NHL. The other interesting thing is, and then there's some people who are old, like writers who they look for narratives or look for storylines. I think what's interesting is you mentioned the Columbus being in a market. I actually think the irony or the interesting nugget is the Four Nations face-off made a great case for Werenski, and I know they're not including the stats, they're not including the play from that event in the voting, but that was a tournament that it really put on the spotlight a lot of star players that people don't get to see often. Like you look at the USA defense, it was Jacob Slavin leading the way. He looked incredible. Everyone got to see how good he is. And even for someone who watches a lot of hockey like I do, you get to appreciate him. You get to appreciate Zach Werenski. Brock Faber was there too. Werenski really stood out in that tournament. And I think a lot of casual fans and even people who watch hockey all the time, they got to see him front and center. And he's been on the map this season, not just with the storyline, but Four Nations, the Stadium Series, he was there, and you watch he's been put on the stage for everyone to see. This actually leads me to Quinn Hughes here, and it's kind of the counter argument to him, which is he hasn't missed as many games, because I think he could finish with 65, 70 in that range. Or if he finishes with 70 games, I think he's on pace to do. That's only 12 games you've missed. That's not a lot of games, but he missed a lot of time, which is, I think, the big thing. February he was out, and he wasn't around the Four Nations face-off, which I don't think should hurt him. But the idea is he's not been that he hasn't been the front and center type of star that people have seen. I mean, the Canucks play on the West Coast. A lot of East Coast people are asleep then. So I'll ask you, Matthew. That's one of the things that I think goes against him is what do we make of the fact that he's not necessarily missed games, but missed time, hasn't had those moments / hasn't been in the public eye. I mean, he wasn't on the Four Nations roster, which was a big story at the time. I don't think that should be held against him, but he just hasn't been on everyone's mind, or really on everyone's sightlines, or everyone's seen him really.
What's funny too is that even when he was healthy at the beginning of the season, and he was playing, still putting up tons of points and stuff, and they had those projections for Norris Trophy, he wasn't even in the finalists. And that is a big thing about being on the West Coast. Guy media doesn't see him as much. He did win the Norris last season, and it kind of went against that. But I think this season, just seeing those projections early on, he wasn't even in the final 3 guys. And it's like, this is the guy that won the Norris last year. Why isn't he not even in your, on your radar early on? And it's not like he wasn't putting up points. Before he got hurt, he was on pace for 100 points again. So, or not again, but he was on pace for 100 points. Yeah. And then he got the injuries. He hasn't missed a ton of games, but like you said, he has missed time. And he was out for a month. It was pretty much a month when he came back this last time. And that's because of the Four Nations and all that. And yeah, it was disappointing not seeing him in that tournament, because I think he probably would have made a huge difference on Team USA. He's obviously one of the best defensemen in the world. I mean, the guy's, missing him is pretty big. I can see when he's off the Canucks roster how much the team just doesn't look the same. They don't move the puck. They don't. They just look like night and day when you're looking at the team of how much Hughes makes a difference, and he'll make a difference on any team he's on. And the big thing this season too, he's leading the Canucks in points, and by a lot, actually. I think it's still about 20 points.
I think
he's ahead of everyone else.
He leads the Canucks, and Werenski leads the Blue Jackets. And if it weren't for McKinnon, Makar would lead the Avalanche. Yeah. It's one of those races. I think that's the important thing to, I think, note is that we're splitting hairs here, where all 3 are going to have a good argument. Now, all 3 should deserve to win it, but only one can. I'll actually ask you another question on Quinn Hughes, which is, I think there could be a block of voters that say from a leadership perspective that they can discredit him for. I mean, you could say that the way the JT Miller, Elias Pettersson saga unfolded, and the fact that it really derailed their season, could be held against Hughes as the captain. I wonder what you make of that, because I think you could make the argument that he's the captain. The fact that it got out of hand and unraveled, that it should be held against him, and they end up trading JT Miller. Elias Pettersson has bounced back a bit, but still hasn't been the star that we expected him to be. And the Canucks are on the outside looking in when they should have been one of the best teams in the Western Conference. On the other side, you could say that because of those obstacles, him still playing well is a better case. But I wonder what you make of that.
I honestly think he handled that situation. I mean, he handled it well as a captain. I mean, he was calm in the media. He didn't blow up. He didn't throw anyone under the bus in any of the interviews he made. He was very, very even keel. And I think as a captain, that's the way he should have handled it. I mean, there's just so much going on that, I mean, arguably, I mean, he's a young captain too. I mean, he's not one of the older guys. And I think he really handled it well. I don't know if the rumor is true that he was the one that championed the trade to get Miller out of there and have just Pettersson. I mean, there's been rumors about that, but I think he handled it well as a leader, for the Canucks as the captain, and that's, I think, a big thing for him. I mean, it is a really tough situation of what's been going on. I mean, lots of adversity the Canucks have had to go through this season. I think he's been a really stand-up captain throughout it all.
It's one of those glass half empty, glass half full. I think voters will see that and say, as the captain, the fact that the Canucks have had this type of season, he has been quiet. That he hasn't taken the hits. He hasn't really spoken a lot about it, and just maybe behind the scenes he's dealt with it. At the same time, you could make the argument that in spite of it all, that he's having this incredible season. The Canucks really should be worse without him there, and worse without him as the captain. It's one of those, depending on how you look at it. I'll actually shift to Stefano. We haven't heard from you in a while, and I think what's interesting is when we've put Makar into this unique spotlight or unique sort of tier. I almost call it the Connor McDavid tier, where when you're this good for a while, you have to do something special to win the award. Like McDavid could lead the league in points and he won't necessarily win the Hart Trophy. He has to hit 150 points or he has to do something crazy to get that award. And I wonder, is Cale Makar doing that this season where you can say that he would get the award or not?
If you're looking just through offensively, he is on pace to break his previous record, his points record. He set last season 90 points. He's actually on pace to almost broke the record of goal scoring when he hit 28 back in the 01-22 season when he won his first Norris Trophy. So if you look at through his stats-wise, he is having a career year. He is on pace to break his goals. He is not going to break his assist records, but it's the assists that are coming in through his goals and his increased volumes of shots. And so when you're looking through the points-wise, it's something that we're going to see in these last final 10 to 12 games that each team still has to play is how are we going to finish these final stats. Obviously, we brought up the playoffs, and obviously we brought up how each players storyline. Can we get to the playoffs? Can we get to the extra little nudge to the bump and to see trying to get these voters on pace? And obviously, all these guys are on pace to have career years. Same with Makar. And we're looking at something of, he's hit 30 goals. He's not going to break 100 points. He can, but he's on pace just to finish around mid-90s, high 90s, where Carlson hit 100 and he got that mark. He's still got to hit 31 just to officially break Mike Green's. So if he does hit those significant marks of going over 100 and hitting 31, you can make the comparisons to Quinn Hughes' season last year and when Erik Karlsson won it of, he hit 100. He hit the 30 goal mark. He's got the offensive skillmanship records to acknowledge his offensive production season while having good defensive metrics. But as a defenseman, it's come down to so much of why we're having this conversation of it's easy to, have a Hart Trophy discussion or a Rocky Richard Trophy like McDavid had that season when he won the Hart, Art Ross, and Richard on that one season, how he had that generational season. Whereas a Norris Trophy defenseman, we're not seeing these level of quality of defensemen that we have since back in when Lidstrom was taking over the Norris Trophy every year, where he was standout the number one defenseman offensively and defensively. Where now there's just so much talent now and coming up through systems of where it's going to be more pick and choose of, do you look at more offensive numbers? Do you weigh the offensive numbers down more because his defensive numbers are even better than his offensive numbers? And that's why we have this discussion every year of what is a Norris Trophy winning defenseman? Is it offensive and defense? Is it more offensive than defense? Or is it more defensive than offensive? I've always advocated for a defensive-esque defensive trophy. We have the Selke. Obviously, it's been for the past 4 or 5 plus years of it's always Patrice Bergeron. It's been Mark Stone. It's been Alexander Barkov because they are just that good, and why we should have a more defensive-esque World Trophy system. But that's a whole nother topic of discussion.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about that, or it's been a conversation for a while. I would suggest calling it the Jacob Slavin Award because the best defensive defenseman, you have one for that, and then you have one for the best overall defenseman. I find it interesting because you keep mentioning his offensive numbers, and something just to keep in mind is that all three of these defensemen also defend, and they defend well. I think people overlook it just because it is a highlight-driven league, and it's a league where people see the highlights, people see the big plays, and a lot of times what gets unnoticed is all three of these defensemen, they're very good defensively, and I think what's interesting with Makar, people don't realize how physical he can play. Is when needed, he can play the physical game. We could deliver hard hits. all three are not only. What's interesting is that unlike Erik Karlsson, I think Erik Karlsson, what year he won, it was 100 points, but he wasn't that good defensively.
No.
And this season, we have three complete defensemen, and it's going to make it interesting. To wrap this up, because I think we're going on for a while here, I'll actually ask all three to make your closing arguments. I feel like gotten a few good points in, actually great points for that matter. So let's start with Matthew here to your closing argument for Quinn Hughes to win it.
I mean, to wrap up everything, I mean, the biggest thing for me is how much he controls the game when he's on the ice, and how much he affects every player that's on it, and not just on his own team, but the team that he's playing against, of how much they have to keep an eye on him and how hard of a time they have defending him. And you mentioned the defensive play. His defense is from his offense. I mean, if that makes sense. Is that of how his skating, his escapability. He doesn't spend a lot of time in his own zone. He transitions the puck really quick, and that's how he defends. And he's got a great stick. He's learned that, and being just body position. His defense has gotten so much better since his draft year and since he was drafted, because that was one of his knocks too. All offense, not much defense, and he's become one of those complete package defensemen. And it all just stems from that ability to control the pace and the game whenever he's on the ice.
It really is it's the bang for your buck. It's also, you mentioned the best defense is offense, where he possesses the puck very well, and when he controls the pace of the game, he's playing the best defense on the ice, where he controls it, or when he creates a turnover, the fact that he can handle it, bring it into the offensive zone, and the way he can turn defense into offense, it's really what you want in a modern defenseman. And I think that's what we have with all three. Stefano, your closing argument for Makar.
I think it's just going to be if he could chase these generational targets. I think if he gets 31, breaks Mike Green's record back in the early 2000s, and he finishes a strong pace to get around mid-90s, potentially even 100, and the Avalanche finish comfortably and potentially second or third in this really hectic conference, I think the voters will look at his production and his accomplishments throughout the season and the records he set, and obviously look at as a all-around defenseman of how was he able to help his team the most. And that's going to be obviously a tough decision when it comes to look at the other two defensemen of what their team has had to gone through. But I think if success speaks a lot, and potentially finish second in a really tough division, in a tough conference as well, is going to speak a lot to the voters. It's
so interesting with Makar. It's that for years, the Avalanche have been, they're a top-heavy team carried by two or three skaters or four players, whatever it is. And now that they have depth, it could hurt his case. But I mean, the fact that he's been throughout the season one of the best players, and I think what also could help his case is that if one of the defensemen, whether it's Werenski or Quinn Hughes, first off, they fall off, but second, their team is out of the picture, then it's a two-person race, and then Makar, you could really make the argument for him. And yeah, he's got a good case for that. Mark, we'll wrap up with you. Zach Werenski on the team with the big storyline, and he's rounded out his game, and he's one of those elite defensemen now. You put him in that same conversation, and that's why we're here. Where he's going to be in the same conversation for a while, I think, where he is a finalist for years to come. So, but for this season specifically, your closing argument for Zach Werenski.
Yeah, it plays over pretty much half of every game. I mean, feels like that he's always constantly out there, just impacting the game in so many different ways, where just offensively, defensively, when the Blue Jackets need a goal, he's there. When they need to shut it down, he's there. Every important situation. So when you're talking about just most outstanding defenseman, we're talking all aspects of the game, it's going to be really hard to top what he's been able to do. And he's been able to stay healthy this year. I mean, just think the last couple of years, he's had some major surgeries, some major injuries to go through. So I think that's what has snuck up on some people a little bit about, where's this all come from? But it's the fact that he's been healthy like that, and he's had 20 goals in a season before. And so he might not get to the 30 goals that Cale Makar will get here, but especially if the Blue Jackets are able to make the playoffs, if he's able to will them in, it's going to be really hard not to vote for him for the Norris Trophy.
And I think what's interesting about that is that if the Blue Jackets get in, it's going to be because they lean on him heavily. Like, they're putting him out there in all situations. They already do that, but his ice time's going to go up, and he's going to be on the ice more, and he's going to be making more of an impact for them. I know they're getting players back. Sean Monahan just returned, and they're finally look more healthy, but he's going to be the guy leading them. And for them to get into the playoffs with him leading the way, and really with the workload that he's done, with everything that he's put in all situations, it's going to be hard. Yeah, it's going to be hard not to vote for him, and that's his reality. If they make the playoffs, if the Canucks make the playoffs, I mean, if all three of these teams could make the playoffs, but really, if all three do, and then and Makar ends up hitting a milestone, whether it's 30 goals, then you really are splitting hairs, and it's really going to be tough. And I actually am glad I don't have a vote this year, because don't need to stress about this. But for to decide, we'll actually let you guys vote. For whoever watches this, comment below on YouTube if you have a pick, and we'll put up a poll. And for anyone has a vote, or anyone who has a strong opinion on this, which I'm sure if you're a hockey fan you probably do. So put your vote down. Put it down on the YouTube on the comment section. We'll post a poll somewhere, and make your case for it. And that's how. And then we'll announce our winner on one of the later episodes. But for now, that's all we got. Thank you all three of you guys for joining. This was fun to do. I hope we did well, and thank you everyone for tuning in this episode. Check out our home ice edition episodes where we dive into some of the teams around the NHL. Those can be found exclusively on the Substack, as well as other good content. Mark produces a lot of stuff there. Matthew does a lot of great exclusive content there as well, at courtesy of the Hockey Writers. Also check out our regular content, the Hockey Writers. I have some stuff there, Stefano. We all have. We're all going to continue to have some good articles there as the season comes down to the home stretch. The playoffs are around the corner, and it's really an exciting time of year. And this is where we can really start focusing on some of these awards and who could win them, and what's going to be interesting and what's going to stand out in the playoffs. We're going to start previewing that as well. So tune in next time for another great episode. Thank you.